Today my guest is G. Andrew Duthie. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming. You're doing this community megaphone concept. It's a whole concept, right? It's a big enterprise. It's got the website. It's got a podcast.
Yeah.
It's got everything.
Yeah. Pretty soon we'll have merchandise.
You got really?
No, maybe. I don't know. I think Dane's working on that.
Yeah. Dane Mortgage.
Yeah. So Community Megaphone is a site that I created, and the goal of the site is really to promote and discover events. And it started out being just purely developer community, and it's kind of migrated into the IT pro community.
Okay.
And the idea is people can come to the Community Megaphone website, communitymegaphone.com. They can click on the add event link. They can add their events. All of that's very low friction. They don't have to have an account. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to give me your life's information or anything like that. You just stick the information in there, submit it, goes into a approval queue. I make sure that the geocoding works right, so we got nice maps for everything, and boom, put it out there. Once that's into the system, it comes out on an RSS feed. It goes into, we've got an embeddable web gadget that you can create your own background, foreground, color, how many items you want, all that kind of good stuff.
Well,
and embed that into your website. Yep,
we're using it for our user group, the Great Lakes Area.net user group. We put our events, our meetings in there, but we're not exploiting that. I'm going to tell you
right.
That.
So you can go and basically create what it does is it just creates an iframe, and you can filter it by state or by event type. So you can say, I only want Michigan user groups, right? And it'll automatically filter that. And the gadget will actually even have an RSS feed that's filtered and an iCalendar feed that's filtered. So you could bring that into Outlook as an internet calendar, and it would keep it up to date with all the new events that are showing up for that filter.
Interesting.
So you can do that automatically. So we've got that, we've got the RSS feed. There's also an ADA data service, or also known as an OData feed, right? So you can actually go, there's an API page, and there's a web service interface that folks can use to get events into Community Megaphone. That does require a user account for. The OData service is read-only, so it basically, anybody can read it, and it will give you a feed of all of the approved events that are in the system, or you can filter it using all of the URL query filters that OData supports. You can slice and dice the data by event type, by state, by you can do it by address. There's a couple of queries I've got in there that you can do queries by distance. I actually wrote those for one of the local guys in Virginia, Kevin Hazard, wrote a Windows Phone 7 Community Megaphone app. So if you have a Windows Phone 7, you can go out to the marketplace and actually download an app that will pull all of the Community Megaphone events into your phone, and you can actually, based on your location, filter to the events that are closest to you.
Nice. So that's what the OData feed is for application developers.
Sure.
They want to put a nice part in on this for a phone, for a WPF client,
for a website. Yeah, absolutely. So my goal really was to make it as easy as possible to get the information in, and to provide as many ways to get the information out as possible, to really leverage that ecosystem, right? I don't necessarily want people to feel like Community Megaphone, I have to go to the website for every single thing. Right? That's not, the point isn't come visit this website. The point is, I want people to know about the events that are happening in the community.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's sort of what drove me passion-wise. So, website's been out there for probably 2-3 years. Last year, I was at the CMAP Code Camp in Columbia, Maryland, and Dane Mortgage approached me, and he said, so I have this idea for a podcast.
Oh, before we go to the podcast, I wanted to follow up on the website.
Oh, absolutely.
You have, you work for Microsoft.
Yes, I do.
Developer evangelist?
I'm a developer evangelist. I work out of the Mid-Atlantic District. I cover Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC.
And so the events you're talking about that are in Community Megaphone, those are developer events, they're IT events. Are they restricted to Microsoft events?
They are not restricted to Microsoft events because of the history of the site. That tends to be the majority of the events that are out there. But there's actually, there are a couple out there right now. There's PyCon Ohio, so there's some Python events. There's actually a couple of PyCons in there. Trying to think of some other events. There have been other events that are non-Microsoft technology.
Is there any restrictions at all on the tech events, right?
Well, so the goal is really to highlight, not necessarily purely free, but community type events, right? So something like Code Match, totally fine, but like Tech Ed doesn't need Community Megaphone.
Got it. Okay.
Right? and people don't need to have to kind of filter out that kind of thing.
Okay.
But you'll find Microsoft run events, like a lot of my team, I'm on a team that does web technology primarily, myself, Rachel Appel, and Chris Bowen, and we're doing a series of webcams coming up this spring.
Okay.
Right? So you'll find those in Community Megaphone.
I see.
Alongside user groups and code camps and SQL Saturdays and SharePoint Saturdays. And right now Community Megaphone is US. So it's all the US. We started off just in Mid-Atlantic and then grew to the East Coast and then gradually
So the
took over
Canadian events, European events are not in there?
Not currently.
Is that because of the geocoding?
That's because, it's because of the limitations of my schema currently, and that's something that I want to address when I start working on B2.
Oh, it's a
which we
database
can talk
issue.
about.
Okay, sure.
It's just primarily, it's the way that I've got things set up is around zip codes, it's
I
around
get that.
US based
because you had
addresses.
no idea it was
and
going to grow to
right.
this popular as it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. It's a lesson learned, right?
Sure.
It's be thinking about what's the next step in the evolution of this site.
I tell my old Access applications that are still around that lesson.
Yeah, exactly. So the future, whether it's a V2 or a V1.5, will definitely be expanding to go global because there's just a lot of people who've really who've requested that. I want to make sure that we do it the right way.
Yeah.
I would rather provide great support for events in the U.S. until we're ready to do it right for the rest of the world.
Sure. Are you actively
or
working
expanding it.
on that new vision?
Right now, what I'm actually doing, I've had some conversations with my fellow Ds about this. I've been kind of struggling with the current app is web forms, and it's evolved over time. So there's a lot of not terribly dry code.
Sure.
I've got probably every kind of data access
I think I see where this is going. You're thinking about rewriting.
So,
Scratch,
yeah,
and maybe an
pretty
MVC or
much.
something.
Although, what I decided to do, the approach that I want to take, I think is going to be a good one. I'm actually going to start looking at pieces of functionality that are in the website that could be implemented as Razor helpers. And what that allows me to do is take discrete chunks of things like mapping. Right? So taking Bing Maps and basically being able to throw a collection of something over the wall to a helper and say, give me a map with some push bins, right, and descriptions and all that kind of stuff. So I just, I don't care what you don't have to know about my database. You don't have to know about my schema. I'm going to give you some predictable type of collection.
And that gives us strategy.
You map it out.
Upgrading pieces of the application, and then also makes it easier for version 2 and 3.
It also means that potentially I may be able to open source some of those helpers and provide some of the functionality that I've worked on for Community Megaphone to the broader community to reuse in their applications.
Very nice, yeah.
Right? Now, the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm waffling right now between MVC3 and ASP.NET web pages. I really like the simplicity of web pages, but I haven't been able to decide one way or the other. And the beauty of doing Razor helpers is that I can build a helper that can be used either in web pages or in MVC3.
Nice.
Right? And so by building out those pieces ahead of time, then when I decide to really move forward kind of whole hog with, let's rebuild the schema, let's kind of clear the ground a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
I've got pieces that are already
way.
built. That I'm not really completely greenfielding it. I've got some history that I'm building off the existing site. So.
That's a good plan. Okay, let's move off the website.
Okay.
You've also got a podcast.
I do have a podcast.
And you know how I know about this podcast?
Because you've been on.
I've
You
been
were a
on.
guest. Yeah, exactly, which is great. So about a little over a year ago, I was at CMAP Code Camp in Columbia, Maryland, and Dane Morgridge approached me, and we'd exchanged some emails before, but we sat down and talked at the CMAP Code Camp. He had the idea to do a podcast that was really about kind of the personalities in the community, rather than being just sort of a pure tech play where it was, let's interview somebody about some specific thing that they're an expert in.
Right.
We also wanted to talk to people who, weren't necessarily, and people could probably take this the wrong way, but we didn't want to kind of go after like top tier rock stars who are talking at all the conferences, who are, the people who can get on any podcast they want to or whatever. Sure. We really wanted to focus on sort of local.
Yep.
And also on people who are up and coming, and just try and make sure that the people who are doing the really good work in the community have a voice too.
Yeah.
And so the vision that Dane had was, okay, when I'm going out to talk, if I'm thinking about going to a local user group or a local code camp, if there's somebody that I've heard on the Community Megaphone podcast, I know a little bit about them. Right. So it gives me a flavor of what that person's talk might be like. Right. So I can decide ahead of time, oh yeah, I definitely want to catch this person at such and such user group or at this code camp. And so, there's that, and then we also we talk technology, we talk community, and one of the things that's really really gratifying about it. First of all, it was great. Dane and I just kind of hit it off, and I think
he's a good man.
Yes, he is. He's a very good man, and we seem to do pretty well playing off one another's co-hosts, which is nice. And I think our technical talents also kind of balance one another nice. He does most of the production work, and I help with promotion and this, so we balance a lot of what we do. But what's really gratifying is we've actually started hearing in people that we've interviewed later on, like one of our favorite things to do is go to live events, like we've got a Richmond Code Camp and Dane's recorded Philly Code Camp, and so we'll go to code camps and things like that and do live podcasting at the event. Because it's just, there's sort of an energy that you get there that you can't get when when you're disembodied voices over Skype.
That's what I do. My show is always in person.
Right.
And partly for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just a lot of fun because we set up a table and we're out in the middle of some common area, and we'll just grab people as they come by and say, "Do you want to be on the show?" And so we'll do a whole day of recording and then kind of edit that down to about an hour-long show or a couple of shows depending on how much material we have. But we've actually had a couple of people that we interviewed over the last 4 or 5 episodes who said that they were inspired to work in the community by listening to the podcast.
Outstanding.
And it's like that's just
great.
Yeah, because that's part of the goal of Community Megaphone itself, the podcast, is really to give people the idea that, hey, this person who's doing all this isn't that different from me.
Oh, absolutely.
I could do that
absolutely.
too. And this person seems to really love what they're doing. They seem to be having a great time doing it. Yeah. So maybe I could have some fun doing that too.
So we're here at the MVP Summit.
Yep, exactly.
And, there's a lot of really smart people on the side of this door right here.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, they all started, and girls, they all started speaking in local user groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing writing talks,
doing
answering a few questions on the forum somewhere. Right. They all started somewhere.
Yeah, and that's my story, right? I've been a part of the user group community since, probably 1997 or 98. So going on 13 years plus. Mm-hmm. And where things started for me was I went to work as a consultant. I'd been working in theater for years after college, mm-hmm. Building scenery, right? Not technical at all in the computer sense. And I made the leap over into IT, and I ended up working for a consulting firm called Spectrum Technology Group. And I was fortunate enough to get put on a contract with 2 of the top developers in the company who happened to be really passionate about user groups. And so they dragged my butt out. Yep, they dragged my butt out to user groups, and I was hooked. That's awesome. I started, oddly enough, I kind of did it the wrong way. I didn't start out speaking at user groups. I somehow managed to get myself signed up to one of the DC area conferences. And the first time I ever spoke, I was so terrified that my knees were literally shaking. And I did a talk on doing VBCom components with ASP front end and SQL Server back end.
I've written those things, and they're non-trivial.
Yeah, and I went so deep in the code that I only got about halfway through my talk before the lady came up at the front and was like, "You're done, you're done."
Just like the theater.
And oddly enough, the evals that I got were not, oh, he didn't know how to manage time. It was like, this should have been 2 sessions.
Okay.
And it was like, then I was really hooked. It was like, okay, so wait a minute, I can manage to screw things up that badly in terms of time management, but they liked it enough that they wanted me for 2 sessions. All right.
I'll share an observation I've had about speaking at community events,
mm-hmm.
Code camps, user groups. The audience wants the speaker to succeed.
Right.
They're pulling for it.
Yeah.
If I paid $200 to go to a Broadway show, then it better be good.
Yeah.
But if I go, and I may or may not be on the side of that. I mean, I want them to be good, but I'm not necessarily pulling for them to be good.
Right.
If I'm going to a code camp and I see somebody speaking, I want them to be good. And if they make a mistake, I'm very forgiving. And when I go up to speak and I make mistakes all the time, the audience is extremely forgiving of that.
Yeah,
and it's hard as a first-time speaker to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you mentioned lightning talks, and that's something that we recently in Mid-Atlantic had a leadership summit last September, and one of the topics that came up over and over again is that the groups that have tried lightning talks have had real success both in developing new speakers and kind of bringing people out of their shells, but it also increases attendance.
Right.
And I think what's happened in our .NET community is that as we've matured, speakers tend to want to speak about higher order stuff, and I think to some extent they feel like that's what the audience wants. Mm-hmm. But it turns out there's still a lot of demand for beginner topics.
Sure.
And the lightning talks kind of fit in nicely with that because you can take some small chunk of something at a relatively 100, 200 level. It's very approachable both from the speaker standpoint for somebody who's new, but also for the audience who's yearning for that kind of, I haven't had the intro on, C#4.
Sure.
Right? And if you leap right into C#4 Advanced, then you've got the people in the audience who feel like, well, I should know more about this. And now I feel bad because I don't understand what this person's presenting, and I feel like I should.
There are a lot of groups. I know the Cincinnati group. I've been there a few times, and they actually have 2 sessions at every meeting. Beginner track and more advanced track, just to address exactly that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're just about out of time.
Okay.
Is there anything more you can talk about Community Megaphone, or do you want to promote your new conference?
Oh, okay. So, well, not my new conference per se, but a Mid-Atlantic effort. So, one of the things we did with the leadership summit that we had, over the years, conversations that I've had with various people in the community in Mid-Atlantic, one of the recurring themes is, we do a lot of great code camps. We usually have about 7 code camps per year in Mid-Atlantic between spring and fall, which in a 4-state area is a fair number of code camps. And we've often talked about trying to do something with a little bit bigger scale, a little more regional, kind of something with a little bigger bang or bigger pop. And that was a big topic at our leadership summit in the fall. And it was one of those where it's kind of like, well, we keep talking about it. I said, let's start having some meetings. So about 6 weeks ago, we set up some weekly calls, and various folks have jumped on. Had a lot of help from Sarah Fatz, who's with Infragistics.
Okay.
She's their community liaison. She's done great work in helping us.
I don't know her personally, but she is supporting our user group.
Yeah, they do great work, and she's right in Mid-Atlantic, so she was a natural in terms
Tell her
of.
I appreciate it when you see her.
Sure, I will. She's actually, I think, still on a scuba vacation right now.
Okay.
We got Steve Bodner, who's actually an old FoxPro hand.
FoxPro, I'm an old FoxPro.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that thread of FoxPro people in the .NET community, and that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah, don't mess with us.
No, I mean in a good way. I see so many folks in the community who have that background, and I'm kind of fascinated by it, and I want to kind of find out, if there's a way that we can inspire others to share that same passion.
Right.
So we got a bunch of people, Kevin Griffin, Kevin Hazard, a lot of folks who've been participating in this, and we've settled on our date. We're going to be doing June 30th, July 1st in Hampton, Virginia, and we want to have software development of all stripes, not just necessarily Microsoft, but non-Microsoft welcome as well. Hardware hacking, so Netduino, Arduino, robotics. If somebody wants to teach about programming Roomba, more power to them. Sounds great. MakerBots, Connect hacking, all of those things are fair game. Kevin Hazard's talked about trying to create some student content, like a kids track. We want to make the conference really sort of family friendly, because one of the goals here is we're in sort of a destination location. So you come in Thursday, Friday, go to the conference, and then you have the weekend. Either you could go to Virginia Beach, which is about 40 minutes away, and you go up the road a little bit, a half hour to Colonial Williamsburg. Great place to spend the 4th of July.
I've been there.
There's Busch Gardens and lots of attractions in the area. So we want to make We want to give it an opportunity to have a family feel, lots of good conversation, and we really want to make it something that people will walk away inspired from. You may learn things that are completely unexpected.
Yep.
You may learn things about what you do as a technologist from somebody else who does a completely different technology. The goal here is not necessarily to promote any one technology over another, but rather to just bring community together and talk about the things that we're passionate about.
Absolutely.
So that is the Mid-Atlantic Developer Expo.
The URL is?
The URL is madexpo.us, and we're on Twitter as madexpo, so MADEXPO. So people can follow us. We're probably a week or two away from doing our call for speakers, and we'll open registration probably a little bit after that. So we will announce all of those things on Twitter.
Your blog is?
My blog is devhammer.net.
Okay.
And communitymegaphone.com.
Dev Hammer, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
The beauty of technology is it's made me lots and lots of friends.